You can probably imagine that when a group of elders of a church get together, we're talking about our future. What is God calling us to do? And we ask questions like, well, what is God leading us to? Where has God already worked through us? What's the way we can make our biggest impact? And when our elders got together to talk about that over the last few months, we discerned that God was leading us to a vision where over the next 20 years, we believe it's possible to impact 1 million people's lives. Now, a lot of that will happen around Suncrest. That's your experience. And we think it's really important to build a healthy church here that's worth reproducing. But 1 million people aren't ever going to be under one roof in Northwest Indiana. What's going to happen is we're going to stay committed to our identity of being a church planting church. Get this. Our church has lived now for about 22 years. In the first 11 years of that, we were able to help 5 new churches get started. That's fantastic. We were young and small and poor and all those things, but we were committed to that value and we helped new churches get started. In the second half of our existence, the next 11 years, we've been able to start more than 25 more churches ourselves. And one of the things that's a discipline for us, because this is about creating a movement, not just individual churches, is that we'll only help start a new church if they're committed to starting new churches. And get this, Suncrest, you're 22 years old and you have at least one great-great-great-granddaughter. Because we planted a church that planted a church that planted a church that planted a church that planted a church. And this is how we create a movement. In fact, here's the situation. We've now planted over 30 churches ourselves. Out of that movement and churches those churches have planted, we're responsible for helping over 150 new churches get started, where more than 20,000 people are worshiping on this weekend in those churches. When we think about the future and how God will keep using that and how it will grow exponentially, we really believe there's a way to get to impacting 1 million people over the next 20 years. Now, that's big numbers. I want you to hear a single story. One of the churches we planted a number of years ago over in Minooka, Illinois is led by a guy named Nate Ferguson, and he is at a great stage of their church. This is Village Church.
Hey Suncrest, Nate Ferguson. I'm the lead pastor of the Village Christian Church in Minooka, Illinois. My first trip to go and visit with a church about partnering with us was to Suncrest, and I'll never forget that experience and the encouragement that they provided. Without Suncrest helping us, we really wouldn't have made it in the beginning. They were the first one to write the first check, but not only that, they've provided leadership. They would come over and help us set up on Sunday mornings in the cold weathers when we first got started. We only had 20 people when we started, so we needed other churches to come in and help us set up and tear down. And Suncrest took a turn in that regard a couple of times. Greg served on our leadership team, our management team is what it was called, for 3 years, and just provided incredible leadership, and still does today. We look to Suncrest for a lot of things. You're at our new facility, which is awesome, and a lot of the elements at the Suncrest Church were brought into this facility. The vision to get this church started was really important, and we actually, I don't know if Suncrest still does this, but there was actually a church planting Sunday where we came on a Sunday and we had our team. We just had a very small core team. We had 20 adults and our kids. So it was a very small start in the beginning, but we actually came to Suncrest and I get to preach the message that day. And for our team, who were all in our 20s and early 30s, to be able to see a church that had made it and had a facility and they had started like we were going to start, that just kind of made our whole core team feel like this can happen. We had 20 people. Today we're averaging in the 600s, and we think in the fall we're going to average in the 800s and beyond. In the time that we've existed, because of Suncrest's model, we've helped start 7, 8, 9, I don't know the exact numbers, other churches in the United States and around the world. Just follow that model. So if you just look at the raw numbers and you see this church started this church, this group, church group, 1,000% or 10,000%. It's a no-brainer. We are always going to start at least one church. We're always going to be at least a partner in a church starting at all times in the history of who we are. It's just doing something else would be silly.